This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
Is it possible that you are a crusty Christian? This is Wretched Radio, not to be confused with the church curmudgeon, who actually is a crusty Christian. In fact, he is crusty and a bit of a grammar Nazi. I sent out a tweet a couple of days ago, and I'm paraphrasing, but I said something like, God is not disinterested in our external works, but he's far more interested in our internal motivation, what's going on in the heart. And apparently, there's a difference between uninterested and disinterested. How do I know? Because the church curmudgeon corrected the word that I had used. You might be just like the church curmudgeon. You're crusty. You're not very likable. There are many of us, in fact, dare I say, most of us, all of us, went through not a crusty Christian stage, but typically what we call cage stage, which is very similar. Not exactly the same malady, but very similar. You get saved. You suddenly discover, wow, the gospel is far more amazing than I ever thought it was. For whatever reason, maybe you were even saved before, but you discovered the depths of the gospel. And you suddenly realize this Bible is way more elegant than I thought it was, how it flows seamlessly together. When I look up a subject, I rarely find a Bible verse alone that simply talks about a subject. There's multiple Bible verses. Why? Because the Bible fits together, and it sings from the same song sheet. And the music is labeled, it's all about Jesus. And when you discovered that, you should have been locked in a cage because you had to let everybody know. And you did it the way that I did it and the way that I suspect millions of others have done it. Forcefully, unlovingly, maybe a little too aggressively. In fact, I've been receiving several emails lately of people desiring to know, how do I help my family? My family, they're not saved. And I've made a bit of a hash of it. I get that. Believe me. I am not pointing a finger at you. Okay, that's not true. I am pointing a finger at you. But I'm pointing it at myself also. Yeah, I did the same thing, like a bull in a china shop. Let me encourage you, if that sounds like you. You want to reach your family. You want to reach your loved ones. If you've made a bit of a mess of it, let me encourage you to do a couple of things. Number one, apologize. Just apologize. And don't do the apology just so that you can get to your next lesson. Just go to them and say, you know what, I'm sorry. I've been thinking about how I treated you and how I taught you. I'm sorry for that. Would you please forgive me? That was just, I'm excited. And I've discovered something new, and I wanted to share it with you. I wanted a beggar who'd been given bread. I wanted to share the bread with another beggar, but I tried to force feed you, and I'm sorry for that. Please forgive me. How's about those Vikings? And there, just stop it there for the moment. By the way, how are those Vikings, Joey? I think they had Monday Night Football recently, if I'm not mistaken.
1-1.
They won?
They're 1-1.
1-1, so they're batting 500. Can you use that term in football? Just move on then and demonstrate. I want to be in a relationship with you because I want to be in a relationship with you. Now, you can then approach it another day, maybe not even the next day. But after you've apologized, get a long view. Not that you want them to not be saved till later. Not that you don't want to share as much information as is possible, but recognize it could just take some time. Don't use this as a liberty, as license to not engage with them, to not witness to them. But recognize it just might take a long time. And don't just keep putting it off because, well, I've got a long view. Have that so that your heart stays right. Third, start engaging with them and remembering this in the forefront of your mind, and I think this will guide all of the other aspects. You're sharing with them because you love them. You care about them, not because you want to be right. You are, but not because you want to see them change their mind. They're clearly lost. You're very concerned for them. That is all good motivation, but demonstrate that you love and care for them as you witness to them, and that will guide you and keep you from being in a cage stage maybe for the rest of your life, or from being a crusty Christian. Kevin DeYoung, writing an article. I think this was taken from his book. This was a Gospel Coalition post. And it's from his book, The Good News We Almost Forgot, Rediscovering the Gospel in a 16th Century Catechism? Huh. Alrighty then. He must have been talking about the Westminster Confession or the Catechism of some sort, and he was rediscovering the gospel, and what you're about to hear comes from that. How do you know if you're a crusty Christian? Well, it's an attitude. What does that attitude sound or look like? I believe in sola scriptura. That's good. I believe in theological distinctives, that there's a difference between fill in the blank, Presbyterians, Baptists, Lutherans, Methodists, Calvinists, Arminian, whatever. That's all fine. I believe in them, and I believe it is good to have them. But if you don't agree with me, I'm not sure you're a Christian. Ever felt that way? No, we're not talking about Orthodox. We're not talking about the bullseye stuff here. We're talking about secondary stuff. Because somebody is not on the exact same page as you are, you're skeptical. You're a crusty Christian. That's got to get rubbed off a little bit. It's not easy. I think we can all show evidences of that through our lives. I think the more we bend right, the more we're inclined to look askance at virtually any jot or tittle that isn't exactly the same. Even, okay, here's an example. You love a particular teacher. There's another guy. He's good, but he's not your cup of tea. You meet another Christian, and he thinks your guy is good, but he's not his cup of tea, and he really loves the guy who's not your cup of tea. And you, in your mind, you perhaps don't say it out loud, wonder if he's actually saved. And it affects your relationship, the sweetness that we can have of genuine unity because we agree on the essentials. Kevin DeYoung, I believe in theological distinctives. I believe in them. It's good to have them. But if the distinctives are not manifestly the flower of gospel root, the buds aren't worth the blooming. Number 2, a second mark of crusty Christians is approachability, as in not having any. There is a sizing upness that makes some theological types unnecessarily prickly. Be careful about this one, because you don't want to give up your views, but you don't want to be so sensitive about them that you're not nice to people who disagree with you or maybe just aren't that far. I know the feeling. You think that if you somebody says something that's just a little bit, you feel like if I don't say something, I'm compromising. No, you're not. You're being gracious, perhaps. Number 3. A crusty Christian is too willing to share their opinions on everything and unable to put any doctrine in any category not marked essential. You're a crusty Christian, and you're not fun to be around. And you think, and I know this because been there doing that, you think that by becoming more gracious, less of a sharpshooter when it comes to every phrase that comes out of any person's mouth, criticizing every single sermon. You think that if you back off on that, you're going to get soft yourself. No, you're not. It means that you're becoming more mature. That's what that means. You're not compromising a bit. It means that you're moving out of crusty Christian cage stage into maturity. So don't let it scare you. Be mindful you can go into a ditch by becoming liberal and compromised. But remember that being a more conservative and simultaneously gracious and loving, sometimes zipping it when somebody says something dopey, is not weakness. It's maturity. Now, they say something totally wonky, they say something that's heretical, then the loving, mature thing is to lovingly and graciously dive in and start asking questions. Not accusing, but asking questions. From Kevin DeYoung, not just pointing out the malady, but also offering the remedy. Let's try hard to be discerning and grounded without always looking for the next theological misstep in our friends, our family, and the songs we sing. Plenty of sort of phrases in the songs we sing. Be mindful of that. That's okay. But don't become crusty over those things. Oh, it used the word burning in that great old hymn. I can't use that hymn. The guy must have been a heretic. That's a crusty Christian. From Kevin DeYoung, let's be able to tell the difference between wandering sheep and false teachers. So important. Delineating between a slightly ill-informed wording of a phrase and a purposeful rejection of truth. If you're a foodie, you might like this. Let us be more like chocolate-covered raisins. Likeable on the outside and surprisingly good for you on the inside. And less like a Tootsie Roll Pop with its brittle, crunchy exterior that must be broken through before anyone can get to the good stuff. If our theological training, knowledge is worth anything, it should pulse throughout your body, making us more godly, more passionate about the Bible, the lost, the world, and more loving toward other Christians and not crusty. We hope you enjoyed that food analogy. Are you a crusty Christian? This is Wretched Radio.
Thanks for listening to the Wretched segment du jour. If you'd like more Wretched, you can listen to the most current stream for free at wretched.tv/listen, or you can become a club member and listen to our entire archive. Wretched, reaching the lost, equipping the saints, and strengthening the local church.